Welcome to the podcast, Candice. It's awesome to have you here. Let's just get straight into it. I was gonna talk just then about how you and I first got to know each other, but I'm sure that'll come out as you talk through your journey with us. So let's have you begin by sharing with the listeners what it was that drew you to become a midwife. I know that you're a midwife before you began being a mum, and you're 1 to 2. Yeah, what was it that got you into midwifery?
Yeah, it's a question that I get quite a lot. And there are lots of reasons that I wanted to be a midwife. I think I'm quite a high energy and um, bubbly person. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, so to speak. So I spent some time in the volunteer fire brigade here in my little town. And I've just always been up to lots of different things. I would like to think that I'm quite a caring person by nature, so there's that too. But also, yeah, I've always had a real special interest for women's health, social justice issues. I'm particularly interested in obviously childbirth and menarche and menopause, and yeah, so I think all of it sort of together. One day I met my neighbor who was a midwife, and we just got talking, and I was like, that sounds really cool. And that sort of started my journey into midwifery, I think, in a
Yeah.
nutshell. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, me as well. Like I hadn't had children when I became a midwife, uh,
Mm,
but was just drawn to it. Just knew I wanted to work in the field of birth. So I
yeah.
relate to some of what you're saying there. So how far into your midwifery practice was it when you decided to start having children yourself?
Yeah. So I had met my now husband at after I'd finished my first year of studying to be a midwife, so the first year of my midwifery degree. And yeah, we'd sort of talked about it being a possibility. And then in my first year of practice, actually, so when I was a new graduate midwife, that's when I felt pregnant with my daughter, Mildred. So I had her in December. So it was quite a wild first year of practice, being both pregnant and yeah, a new midwife in the community.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I have a very, very supportive practice that I work in. And I say that I still work there because I
Yeah.
do. They're really close friends of mine. But I am on leave right now because I've obviously had another baby. But yeah, I digress. Um, yeah,
How would
had
you
her.
describe that midwifery practice? I know a few of the people in your practice, and yes, they are a gorgeous bunch. But how would you describe how that practice is perhaps different to other practices? What's kind of some of the key philosophical underpinnings of the midwifery team that you work with or worked with?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, because I'm on your podcast, we have a very our philosophy is very much um I don't want to use the wrong words, sorry. Um we're very much um respectful of we're a holistic practice. We are very much respectful of the woman's the birthing person's emotional, physical, spiritual, and whānau health. So a lot of our births are in a home or primary birthing unit setting. Um, we absolutely we are very passionate about keeping up to date with evidence and um, sort of comparing that with local guidelines, which aren't always evidence based. We work with a lot of people who wish to work outside of those guidelines from the get-go. And yeah, we take mainly people who are birthing at home or in a primary unit, unless they are like really special cases and they're kind of needing our philosophy, but in a tertiary space. So we wouldn't exactly call ourselves a home birth practice, but we are very much passionate about normal physiological birth, which we know more often happens at home and is less interfered with at home. But we know it's not always the most practical thing for every person. So yeah, that was a little bit wishy-washy, but hopefully that makes
it wasn't at all. No, that was great. Love that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about when I was practicing as a midwife, I got pregnant in my second year of practice. So to my first baby, so not too dissimilar to your situation. And I know that for me, having come through my midwifery training and been working as a midwife for a while, I had a very, very clear vision of how I wanted to birth my baby and where I wanted to birth my baby and with who I wanted to birth my baby. So, I knew the midwives, so I knew who I wanted at my birth, and I knew I wanted to birth at home. That was like a given for me. And I went into birth quite fearless, I guess, because I just believed that I was going to be able to birth my baby without, any need for any sort of interference, and that if I was one of those unlucky ones that happened to have something come up that meant that, it was safer for me to go to hospital to birth, I knew my midwives would, they'd act, or I'd know, and we'd go and it'd be what it needed to be. So I kind of was really able to sort of surrender into it. And I kind of wonder how it was for you, being in a similar position, working in a similar sort of a philosophical practice as a midwife, having similar sorts of midwives, surrounding you, or like presumably supporting you in your birth. What did your vision look like for Mildred's birth? And what did your vision look like? That's enough of a question.
Yeah. Really similar to you in that I went into it super fearless. I had no concerns whatsoever. I've seen so many people birth babies beautifully, and particularly at home, they have just been wonderful experiences for me as the midwife, not the birthing person. Like I will never fully understand what each person was going through in that moment. But yeah, I knew I knew that it was the safest option to be at home, that I was more likely to have, like I said, a physiological birth at home. So that was absolutely my plan. I actually picked my practice partner as my midwife. Not the right decision for every single person out there, but absolutely the right decision for me. We were so close, but also completely able to kind of separate professional and personal in a way. So that's what I had planned, was to birth at home with my practice partner and another chosen midwife in my practice who I was also quite good friends with. And my husband there, potentially his kids there, so they're my stepkids now, and potentially my mum. So that was kind of my vision, but I very much had it set in stone that I was going to birth at home. I could absolutely do it. Probably use the water, just very much a family-centered birth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did it unfold?
Yeah.
It's
So I
birth.
was pretty shocked. I think I was quite shocked by, I want to say the pain, but it wasn't just the pain, because I think it's really easy for us to just say birth is painful. It's more complicated than that, right? I had quite a long latent phase, so I was up all night. I did the classic, like, I'm in labor now, and didn't go back to bed. So I didn't listen to what I would usually. I did not practice what I preach at all. I got up and I was super excited. I was having my baby. And in my head, I think a part of me thought my baby was just going to come out. Um, Even though I know that is not the case for a lot of people, especially not first time mothers. And it's actually okay to have maybe a longer labor than I guess what you expect.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I spent a lot of time just up pacing around, setting the fireplace, yes, lighting the fire, sitting on the toilet, putting on my music. Like, yeah, I was just super excited. Um, and obviously that adrenaline and cortisol and everything wasn't ideal for like oxytocin production. So I had quite a long latent phase. Um, I ended up getting super dehydrated and worked up and wondering why it wasn't happening and why I wasn't going into established labor yet. And I remember getting to about 12 hours in, it must have been around midday. So I'd been up since about midnight, and just looking at myself in the mirror, seeing my dehydrated face and like feeling hot and sweaty, and like the contractions or the surges were coming every 10 minutes. And they were just so intense, but still so far apart. Um, and I just really got into my head, got my midwife over, decided I was going to head in for some codeine and temazepam to get myself some sleep. And then she kind of calmed me down, told me everything was normal, came home, visited my home, um, did a stretch and sweep for me at my request. I was I say only 2 centimeters, but I know that that's not always indicative of how long I've got to go, but I was very much in my head at that point. Um, Kind of continued on for many hours. My midwife was amazing because I wasn't technically an established labor, and lots of midwives would not be wanting to attend at that point. But she spent many hours with me, distracting me and putting movies on and giving me drinks and Kai, and yeah, just wrapping me in lots of love when my husband was exhausted and had been up with me for a long time. Um, I ended up transferring to the local tertiary unit at, I think I was about 8 centimeters dilated when I'd asked for another exam a few hours later. So it was very quite quick progress, sorry, in the grand scheme of things. But I was just really scared and really
So
sorry.
when you said you wanted, when you said you transferred and you're
Mm.
8 centimeters dilated, what was your thinking and feeling at that point in the piece?
It was just that classic, if this is how bad it is now, how on earth am I going to cope when I'm pushing this baby out? And it was just fear-based. Um, I was just really frightened, and
Yeah.
um, I hadn't really done enough work antenatally, I don't think, to practice any grounding techniques or I guess just work through hard things. And that's what you and I did a lot
Mm.
sort of work around, which we'll get to obviously. But yeah, that's what I just found so helpful for my next birth, which we'll
Mm.
get it obviously. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. And look, when you've been in labor for a long time, and I think that having the midwifery background and knowledge almost sets you up for some more struggles in some regards, because it is hard to get out of that midwifery mindset. And you know what you're used to seeing, and well, why am I not fitting the mold? Or, but also the fears around, correct me if I'm wrong, if this wasn't your experience, but the fears around, I'm a midwife, I should know how to do this. I, yeah, I should know how to do this. I should be able to do this. Why am I having to go to hospital? And
Mm.
and the sort of shame that I hear a lot of other midwives who I've worked with in the past express to me around having to, the walk of shame into the hospital and be confronted with their colleagues and that. And I'm a failed home birth. I'm putting in air quotes here. But yeah, was any of that at play for you?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And if anything, yeah, it was a very humbling experience as well, and reminding me that all women are freaking incredible, no
Yes.
matter how they birth.
Yeah.
So that was like a really amazing, and not that um, I feel like I am a respectful person when it comes to people choosing to do things differently, but in my own heart, I felt like there was a right way I had to do it. And I did not deviate from that plan in my brain at all. I had not prepared any, yeah, I didn't have a contingency plan. It was, this is what I'm doing. And then when I realized, oh, this is hard work, I just don't think I knew how to cope.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I ended up transferring in. And my midwife did an incredible job at trying to distract me and say, no, this is all really normal. And oh my gosh, yeah, the amount of energy she put into me. She was amazing. So amazing. And obviously my husband too, amazing. Um, they were trying to get me to go to the birthing unit first to try just some internox, but I was so scared. And um, it later became apparent she was posterior, which I'm sure everyone, yeah, it's very, very common, but still not fun.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I think I just wanted to be where I could numb myself, basically,
Yeah.
completely get away from the sensations I was experiencing. So yeah, went to hospital. Sorry, I hope I didn't move on too quickly from your previous question, but yeah, we ended up going to Christchurch Women's, which is the local tertiary unit. I used the gas for a few hours, which was really, really great. I felt the best that I felt the whole time. I locked myself in the bathroom with my husband with the lights off. I was in the shower breathing on the gas. Um, and I was just I felt in control. Or at least like I was doing something and working with it. And yeah, so that was really great. And eventually got in the pool, tried to push for a wee bit, could see a little bit of baby's head coming. And then I just kind of shut off again and panicked. Yeah, I refused to push. Just wanted to suck baby up. Um, Pushed a little bit, yelled, pushed a little bit, yelled. By this point, in air quotes, laboring for 24 hours ish. So I was obviously exhausted. I'd been up for 24 hours, understandably exhausted.
Mm.
Um, and I just begged to get the doctors in to pull her out or numb me. And eventually, they came in and did an exam, and at my request, she was direct OP, so posterior, still a bit high up in the pelvis, and I was fully dilated. And we made a decision to go for an epidural, which I think for me was a really good call. Yeah, just given how unprepared I was.
Mm. Mm.
And I'm really happy with that decision.
Awesome.
Yeah, we spent a good hour after that point. I was just so comfortable. My midwife says I was a completely different person, laughing, joking again, because I was really quite distressed before that point. Yeah. We spent a good hour or so kind of just resting, sleeping, keeping the doctors out because at that point I'd been fully dilated for I think a couple of hours, and in most cases they would like a baby to be born after you've been pushing for a couple of hours. I hadn't been actively pushing for a couple of hours. I really was just trying to stop things from happening, so it was okay. In our mind, in my mind, in our collective mind. And then I got pushing again once I'd sort of gained some energy back from a rest. The epidural was quite good. I'd almost call it a walking epidural. I was able to get up on all fours and squat and turn around, and I tried heaps of different positions. My daughter on the CTG was doing great, so the heart rate was looking fine. Everything was really good, but I just couldn't really push her down even after a couple of hours of really good pushing. So the doctors ended up coming in and talking about an assisted delivery, which I was fine with. I'd been fully dilated for, I think, 4 hours at this point. So might have been 4.5 hours. Popped a Kiwi cup on. They wanted to give me an episiotomy. I said absolutely not. So just her head was born very slowly. And then they took the Kiwi cup off, and me and my husband, that part of our kind of negotiations were, you can take the cup off and step back, and then we'll do the rest, sort of thing. So me and my husband delivered, lack of a better word, our baby girl. And it was really great. And I was super happy, and just had a little 2nd-degree tear. We had to stimulate her a bit because she was a little bit stunned, but just rubbed her up with some towels, and she was fine. I ended up taking out my own epidural and IV line and walking out of the hospital an hour and a half later, much to their disgust.
Wow.
Well, it might have been 2 hours, but I was in the shower and off home not long afterwards, and I was so happy. And I felt really in control of the decisions that were made when I was at hospital. But I also felt really out of control when I was in labor. It's kind of going through those normal motions and the hormonal changes, and just a lot of fear came up. Yeah, I think both can be true. It was a really hard experience, but a really good experience at the same time for different reasons.
Yeah.
But I knew that I had to do it differently second time around. I wasn't sure how. I didn't know how to start. But it was very much, yeah, it was very obvious that a lot of anxiety came up for me. And I am someone that does struggle with anxiety in my day-to-day life. So I think it was that had to be, yeah, addressed. And it was a good opportunity to do that when I fell pregnant with my second. Yeah.
I just wanted to check in with you. You've talked a lot about, you keep using the terms as in control or as out of control. And this is making me remember working with you and what was coming up around control or lack thereof as in your youth and the situation in your family home, and kind of how impactful that was. And sort of I feel like that is quite a big part of the healing journey you went on, was kind of reflecting on some of that and understanding where this like fear of loss of control was coming from, and the happening. But I don't know if this is something that you want to completely avoid talking about or not.
Oh, no, and I don't mind you keeping that in at all. Yeah, no, that's very much a part of my story, and and unfortunately a part of lots of people's stories.
Well, this is it. This is it. This is why I'm like, if you're open to talking about it, great, because this is many people's stories.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what we don't know, and when we're growing up in a particular environment and we're developing these certain survival techniques and these ways of keeping our nervous system functional, we don't recognize that that's what we're doing, and then these things play out in later parts of our lives, and we don't understand why was I so anxious, or why was I filled with fear when there was a sense of loss of control, or why wasn't I able to surrender to this process? And it's like, okay, well, if we reflect back on some of the things that were traumatic for you in your childhood, you can sort of see why.
I just wanted to say, just before it leaves my brain, yeah, that's just something I've noticed with motherhood in general. Not just the birthing process, but also that fourth trimester, as there is so much to learn about myself and yeah, my youth and my childhood, and challenges, I guess, that I need to not break free from necessarily, but work through so that I can be a better parent. And I think it is part of that rite of passage. Yeah, I don't know.
What were your reflections on your birth experience and the postpartum time before you got pregnant with Murphy?
Initially I was in shock, I think, and I would have said it was traumatic. Yeah, really took me by surprise. And then I think as I went on, I went back into kind of survival mode. How can I control this? I can say there were these positive aspects, and that's fine. It was lovely, wonderful. Everything's all good. Yeah, but I definitely had a lot of shame still around transferring. Like I didn't really want to share any photos of me with all the lines and the wires and the cables hooked up to me. I think in my head, I didn't want people to know exactly what had happened. So yeah, I kind of told the story in my own way that felt, yeah, felt positive, I guess.
Mm.
When really it was really, really, really hard.
Mm.
Um, sorry, what was the question? Kind of trailed off in my brain.
Well, another question that's popped up. You've kind of answered my question, but what was the story you were telling yourself about your birth experience? What were you believing was the reason that your birth went the way that it did and not the way that you had hoped it would?
I mean, I think I blamed a lot of it on my daughter being posterior.
Mhm.
So, so, and I mean, yes, there is research that shows that posterior labors are hard, for lack of, yeah. There are higher rates of cesarean and instrumental birth and epidurals and all of that. But how much of that is because of us being impatient and not having good tools to cope in early labor? And I think that right there was my problem. Was I didn't have the tools in my kete to cope with hard things.
Mhm.
I was used to being in control of everything. I'm very much an organized person. I am never late to things, and if I am, I'm extremely anxious.
Mhm.
Um, I I just have my way of doing things, um, and without going into detail, that's because of some traumatic things that I've been through, and it's a coping mechanism. So yeah, that's very much, yeah, very much a part of my story and something I identified that I needed to work through second time around. Um, yeah. And I'll just say, I kind of thought I had to have my shit together by the time I had children.
Mm.
I thought that I would, you know everything about myself. I would be sure in my identity. I would, yeah, I would be I would be the final form or final version of myself when I was ready to have children. But now um, it's obvious that not only is becoming a mother this important transformative process, but each time you become a mother to a new human being, there is so much opportunity to grow and learn. And yeah, yeah, there was a lot that yeah,
100%. Oh my gosh. And that does not stop when
yeah,
they move out of babyhood, like I am still learning and growing from my relationship with my 24-year-old daughter and my teenage sons. It is a beautiful, never-ending process of learning, growth, being humbled by the things that, yeah, we weren't aware of or didn't know, that our children open our eyes up to. I mean, they
yeah,
really are such an amazing opportunity for the beautiful mirrors for us to reflect on the things that we perhaps want to work on, or that we're doing great, or like they are our little mirrors in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Mm.
totally. So yeah, I just find that I think this process has been really great for my relationship with my daughter too, who is almost 2 years old. Um, just yeah, just being able to see me um, learn to regulate my nervous system a little bit more is going to help me teach her about her emotions and her different stages of development. And yeah, and ways to cope when things are hard. And yeah, I think it's also gotten me to slow down and enjoy things a bit more. I think I was very much an autopilot when she was born, and I was just like, right. It very much affected my bonding with my daughter. Like it took many months, to kind of realize that I was a mother, and I spent a lot of time I jumped back into work too early. Like I had a client at 4 weeks postpartum. That was ridiculous. And I was attending births by 3 months postpartum again. And yeah. It was very like, I was just on high alert, and just,
Maybe a bit of a coping strategy, having these distractions that mean
exactly.
you have to sit with the discomforts of this new role you've found yourself in, right? And the unknowns and the lack of control. And you've talked about the lack of control, or I had no control in this situation and I felt I had more control in that situation. This word has come up quite a bit with you, which is no surprise, given, like I know your history well, and you mentioned before, some childhood traumas in that. And when we experience these traumas and as we are growing and developing, we develop tools, survival strategies to enable us to cope and get through these difficult times. And they stick with us. And often it's all happening quite subconsciously, right? But then we're met with something new, like a pain we didn't expect, a level of pain we didn't expect in birth, or a degree of fear, lack of control that we weren't aware of was going to take our bodies back to that time in childhood where we had no control. And your coping strategy might have been to distract or to numb yourself, and so that numbing the wanting to go to hospital for the epidural may well be exactly what a mimicking of your survival strategy that you had adopted from childhood.
Yeah. And something that you said to me when we were working together during my pregnancy with Murphy, was something you said really stuck with me. It was something along the lines of acknowledging those responses as my body doing a great thing. My body is trying to keep me safe, saying thank you, body. However, I'm going to kind of shelf that or ignore that or whatever, acknowledging it, because my body is amazing. How cool that I've learnt these coping strategies. My body is trying to keep myself safe, but also it's time to figure out new ways to kind of get through those hard things. So yeah, just coming at it with a positive spin, I guess.
Yeah, positive reframe, right? Like it's kind of like that whole like failure to progress in birth, and helping people to reframe that to see that's just your body trying to protect your baby from being born when you don't feel safe. It's not your body failing you. It's your body trying to protect you. And sometimes just having that understanding and acknowledging it actually can shift things in a really big way. It can help us soften into something that we would otherwise have tensed into. Or
because I think it felt really big and scary. I guess confronting my previous traumas and things that are affecting me as an adult, and B, confronting my birth with Mildred, C, figuring out how I was then going to cope in this labor, and just being a mother in general. It all felt really big and scary, so that just made me feel a bit more at ease with the process.
So you got in touch, and we did an unraveling your trauma session together, and we did a planning your healing birth session together. We did a havening session together. You joined my soulful birth course, which was amazing. So we did a bit of work together over your pregnancy with Murphy. Yeah, is there anything you want to share about those experiences?
Yeah, and I think a lot is to be said for even just talking it all through with you was so incredibly helpful. I think as well it was very, very evident that nobody could do it except me. So yeah, but just having you to guide me and remind me to stick to these different practices that we'd through. So we'd had lots of we had journaling prompts that we went through. I did a lot of hypnobirthing, like meditation. I loved your meditation tracks, by the way. Just one of the things that grinds my gears is when I'm listening to like American accents. So the fact that it was a New Zealand accent was really, really helpful. Yeah.
I'm so with you on that. Actually, one of the tools that I suggest to people, and I may well have said this to you as well, is I think that guided meditations are most powerful when we record ourselves
Yeah,
saying meditation. I think I said that to you, eh?
you did. Yeah. And I actually never got around to it, but I just loved listening to your voice so
Oh,
much.
right.
So it was great. No, I found those guided meditations so powerful. And I just envisioned myself in labor in those moments. And I use this analogy a lot with with my stepkids actually. But yeah, forming those neural pathways, it's like a cornfield, right? Have you heard this analogy? No. So when you walk through a cornfield or enough times, it forms a path, right? But if you don't use that path enough, then the corn kind of grows back over, and you're less likely to take that exact path again. And that's what forming those neural pathways is, right? Is it's the more we practice, the more we can easily revisit during vulnerable moments such as labor. Yeah, and I'm sure you talk about this heaps, and I'm sure we have talked about this heaps when we were working together. But yeah, it was almost like rehearsing for my labor. And that was something that came up so many times when you and I spoke was, okay, and so what are you doing to practice coping with hard moments in everyday life? And so I found myself doing my diaphragmatic breathing when I was filled with rage at the traffic lights, or I don't know. That's a terrible,
Okay. No,
but
it's
like, you know, yeah, I found myself uh doing guided meditations when I'd had a particularly stressful day and felt overwhelmed with work. Um, yeah, I found myself doing journal prompts instead of mindlessly scrolling on my phone because that was way easier. That was a way easier way to escape.
well, it's a distraction, a numbing, essentially. It's
Yeah,
just falling back into that old patterning, right? And here
yeah,
you're creating some new neural pathways by doing the work, doing the self-work.
yeah, yeah. Cool. That's a very long way of answering your question, but
Are there any particular journal prompts that you recall were especially helpful for you?
yes, yeah. I remember finding one of the journal prompts particularly helpful, and I think I did this with my husband actually. It was something along the lines of, what are things that you can do to minimize fear? Because I think a whole lot of my focus was around pain, and minimizing pain when really I can't get away from pain. Labor is supposed to be pain, and in most cases is. And that's a really normal, healthy thing that my body is doing, telling me, okay, this is painful. Now you need to go to your safe space. But really it was about dealing with the fear as it came up in labor and as it was going to come up in labor, because again, I think that it is a normal response to put you into your safe space, or to encourage you to get into a safer space. Yeah, so I think it just it made me think about more tools that I needed to incorporate into my toolbox.
Beautiful.
Sense.
And will they come out and you sharing your birth story, or do you want to tell us what some of those tools were now?
Yeah, I think they will come out in sharing my birth story. It's not the most exciting birth story, to be honest.
Normal boring birth,
Yeah.
the extraordinary and the ordinary of birth. It's exciting in its ordinariness, right? Like it's it's exciting for the right reasons when it's a birth that you come out the other side of feeling like yeah, I just did that.
Yeah.
Did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was just helpful to envision, going back to your question about the journal prompts, it was just helpful to remind myself that there were ways to cope that wasn't just pain relief. And it was actually all about my headspace. And there were ways that could there were different ways that we could bring myself back and ground me. And I didn't have to be in control, and it was in fact going to maybe be a little bit scary at points and a little bit painful at points. And there was nothing I could do about that other than remind myself this was normal and part of the process. And yeah.
Yes, this wasn't threatening your well-being, your life. This is good. It's healthy pain, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is there anything else that comes to mind that you would like to share about the planning or healing journey you went on during your pregnancy and the lead up to your birth? Or are you feeling like we're ready to hear Murphy's birth story?
I can't think of anything, but I can't think of much at the moment. My brain's.
What was your practical plan looking like in terms of your birth?
So
were you birthing at home?
Yes, I had the same midwife. She was practicing differently this time though. So week on, week off with somebody, which is actually the midwife that I told you about at the start. The midwife who was my neighbor and got me into midwifery.
Oh wow.
So, we're all very good friends now. So yeah, it was me, my two midwives, because they obviously wanted to stay on call for me, which was very kind of them. And then I had a third midwife there as as emotional support, because she's a very, very good friend of mine, and she was the midwife that was there for Mildred's birth. So anyways, had 3 of them there, which was lovely. But yes, that was the plan, was to have all 3 of them if they could make it. And then just my husband, my daughter at home, whatever happened, yeah, whatever was going to happen. I didn't really mind whether she slept through or was awake or whatever. I didn't. So yeah, plan was to have her here too. And then my stepkids wanted to be there again. They yeah, that was the plan if it worked out, was to have them there as well.
How old are your stepchildren?
15 and 10. So Phoebe is 15, and Jack is 10. And they are very, very well versed in birthing terminology, and they know exactly how it all goes down, and they were very keen.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, planned to birth at home this time. I went through many kind of I had many fearful moments throughout my pregnancy of I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. I should just plan to birth at the tertiary unit with an epidural again. But I worked through those and just kind of faced them head on. With your help, which was amazing. And yeah, I just told myself this is going to be hard, but I can do it. And I think that was my mantra that got me through. Yeah.
This is hard and I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've literally got an affirmation on the wall that I can see that I've kept up. And it says, I can do hard things. I'm like, yeah,
I can do hard things.
Yeah.
It's worthy of keeping that plastered there for many elements of our lives, not just birth, right?
Yeah, totally. So I have kept up a few of my affirmations that I found so incredibly helpful. And I always thought they were so cheesy affirmations. But honestly, one of the main tools that helped me during labor. So
have you got a couple of others around that you can see that you could read?
I have 2 of them up still. Just because there was that one that I kept up when I was struggling postpartum.
Yeah.
Just with my mental health. And then I've kept the one up, which is actually in the kitchen, and it says, it says each surge brings me closer to my baby. And that was just one that I just stared at for hours and hours. So it just reminds me of how awesome I did. So I've left that one up.
Love it.
So, yeah, it was the only one that I that I really looked at. But yeah.
Beautiful. Tell us his birth story.
So I had Mildred at 41 weeks in one day. And I kind of expected that my normal would probably be around that mark. But as we know, it could be anywhere between 37 weeks and 42 days, which is, gosh, that's a hurdle in itself, isn't it? Just coming to terms with that and letting go of control around when baby is going to arrive. Hey.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest first lessons, isn't it? This like patience and surrendering to the unknown and accepting that life, nature, baby knows better than we do when labor ought to start.
Yeah, totally. So I'd been niggling for probably a couple of weeks, And I was very surprised at how different the Braxton Hicks or the practice contractions felt. Um, I know that my uterus was practicing for the big day, and that's all good. But I really did think I was going to have my baby early. Well, when I say early, I mean before my due date. Yeah. And I didn't. So I went, yeah, every night I would have these tightenings start up when I was in my relaxed state. Yeah, when I felt safe and oxytocin could flow. So I had these practice contractions every night for weeks. And then I was 40 weeks and 4 days, and they were getting stronger every night, I think. But I was in the bath with Mildred, my daughter, and I emptied the water out, and I just turned to get up and felt a real sharp twinge, and I was like, "Ow!" My husband said, "You okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I just pulled something." He was like, "Oh, all good." And then it happened again when I was getting out, just a sharp, just twist. What is that? That is so weird. I think it must have just been his head kind of clunking down and a bit of pressure on the cervix and maybe a wee twist on my ligament or something. But it just felt different. So I got out, put Mildred to bed, and yeah, as soon as she went to bed, those practice tightenings turned into real strong tightenings. And within 20 minutes, I was, yeah, leaned over the washing machine, kind of howling through them. So I tried to call my stepdaughter, who I had just texted. I'd said, I think things are happening, but I'll let you know when I'm sure. Tried to call her, and she must have been asleep. So I thought, okay, well, it's not right. I'm just going to leave it. Just going to leave. I'll let them sleep. But yeah, it really was that classic. I had to finish all the tasks for the day before my body said, "This is it. It's time now." I had a run of really fast multip births, which just means births. Sorry, how do I
That are
explain
not first babies.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I'd been attending a few multips birthing before I'd finished and gone on maternity leave. And yeah, a bunch of them were just really, really rapid births that I barely made in time. So in my head, I think there was a little bit of I had kind of expected that I was going to have a fast birth. Even though I told myself that it was normal if I didn't. There was a part of me that thought, I'm just gonna, yeah,
My God.
sneeze the baby out.
I
But
do
not.
suggest dreaming big, like
Yeah,
how would
no,
your
no.
dream birth look like? Oh, I just sneeze the baby out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that didn't happen. Um, I had made, I had decided I really wanted Internox again, so the gas in air, which was quite a process to get sorted. It's very expensive if you want it at home. Yeah, it's quite expensive. But I had decided, and this was something you and I had talked through a bit as well, Carla, was that control thing. Is that me trying to control the pain, control the fear, control my experience? And an element was yes, absolutely. But I was quite, I I was traumatized from my first birth and that pain, and I did want something there on hand. And if it could prevent me from transferring to the hospital and experiencing unnecessary intervention, then yeah, then I decided that was the right call for me, as I wanted the gas.
Right. And
Yeah.
even just the fact that you know it's there, that it's a possibility, right? You may not use it, but just knowing that you have that is available if you need it, it can, again, we want to do whatever we can to just decrease the levels of fear, increase the level of trust and safety. And I
Yeah.
thought it was a beautiful solution for you to just have that as an option.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And a part of me kind of went straight into my thinking brain, my midwife brain, my planning brain, and I needed to have all the people there that I wanted, and I wanted to make sure the gas was brought over by my midwife on time, and I had a birth photographer, and I wanted them to come because I really wanted photos of him being born, and yeah, so I really had to, it took me some time to get out of that brain, and that is, I'm 99% sure why my labor took the time that it did. Um, Even then, it was still really, really normal, but
Mm.
but it wasn't a rapid birth like some second time mums get. Um, Anyways, I just labored in the lounge here over the couch behind me and just stared off into space, into this corner of my kitchen for I want to say almost 12 hours. I took a break because I got up and I went to the toilet and I got in the pool and yeah. Um so it was probably about 11:30, 12 when things got really quite intense. I
So
was
late
doing great.
morning, midday, we're talking?
Sorry. So that was 11:30, 12 at night. So
Okay,
it had only been a few hours.
right, right.
I was jumping ahead.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, so I put Mildred to bed, called my stepdaughter at about 10:30. Um, Thought, never mind, she's asleep. And things got really intense over the next hour. Um, the contractions or the surges were kind of coming every 5 or so minutes, but they were really strong and they were quite long. So they were ranging between like 60 and 90 seconds. And I thought, wow, this is my second baby. I could have a baby any minute. So I need to get everyone here. um, yeah. So I got my midwives slowly made their way over. And they just hung out on the couch. One of them had a sleep downstairs. I you started using the gas around 1 o'clock maybe. But things didn't really become super strong and regular till about 3 a.m. No, they were strong. They were strong, but they just weren't really regular, and I was still very much in my thinking brain. Um, I kept, asking them what the time was. Do you think I'm really having my baby today? Um, when are you guys gonna call Chloe, who was taking photos? And they were just like, Candice, be quiet, stop, focus. They weren't really like that, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were. They kept reminding me, Candice, you need to go into the zone now, um and
Leave the thinking for us to do.
yeah, totally. Um, so yeah, I had many moments where I had to remind myself to use my breathing techniques to calm myself down, diaphragmatic breathing. I'd go to the toilet for a break. Then I'd just stare at myself in the mirror and tell myself I was doing this and everything was normal and it was amazing what I was doing. And I had affirmations all around the house, everywhere. And then I came back to my spot, leaning over the couch here, and just stared at that one affirmation for after every contraction, reminding myself it was one at a time. Each one I got through really well. It was really hard, but it was over. And yeah, each one, yeah, I just had to get through them one by one.
Do you recall the pain level of intensity of the pain to be any different to when you were giving birth to Mildred?
No, I think it was the same. I just knew, I don't know how to really know how to explain it.
I think it's to do with that clear link between the mind and the physical sensations in the body.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're both pain, but when our mind is telling us this is scary, this is concerning, this is not okay, then the pain feels less bearable, less tolerable, more, like difficult to manage. Whereas when we're telling ourselves, yes, it's sore and I can do it, which was one of your affirmations. Now I can do hard things. Hurts and it's okay and it's normal. Then we can cope so much more. For some people, they say it really reduces the sensation of pain to have that sort of a mindset. But yeah, I love that you were sharing that. Yeah, it was probably, and to your recollection, equal intensity, and yet managed so differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it was super intense. But I felt okay about that. And it was one by one, and everything was normal, and my people were there loving on me. And they were last time too, but it was that internal work that I had done to remind myself that I could do it. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I was just like that for hours, really. Just breathing through the sensations. Got to about 5 a.m. and I turned to my midwife and I said, I'm nervous about pushing him out. I didn't feel that last time. I had an epidural. I'm nervous about that. And I'd seen as a midwife, you see the noises or the faces, and you hear the noises that people make when their baby is being born, that final kind of push. And I had kind of told myself I'd never fully experienced that. So I didn't really know what it felt like to give birth. Which isn't true, because I did feel a lot of the sensation still. But yeah, I just thought that's the hardest part, right? So this is going to be real hard. And I had that moment of fear creeping in, and then I said, I don't know if I can do it. And my midwife, one of the midwives, just said, sometimes we just need to say that, to let it out, and say that we want to give up. And then we know that we're ready to have a baby. So, yeah, you're right. I'm in transition and I'm going to have a baby real soon. And I just went back to it. And that was that. I just needed to say it. And then I reminded myself again, hold on, I can bring myself back to center. I've practiced this before. And I'm going to have my baby. It's going to be okay. Yeah. So I jumped in the pool and I began to cry. Um, and I wasn't distressed and I just was crying and super,
Mhm.
super emotional and I just said, I'm just, yeah, I was just really overcome with emotion.
Yeah.
And um, I kind of became a bit more pushy, felt more pressure, needed to poo. Um, a little bit more of that fear came bubbling back up. But am I really fully dilated? Can I really push a baby out? I asked another midwife for a vaginal examination, and she said, I can do that, but um, you could just pop a finger in yourself and see what you can feel. Um, and I put a finger in and I felt his head and it was there. And there's this photo that my photographer took who was there by this point. Um, and it's just my face looking so happy that he was coming and I was having my baby and he was gonna be born at home. Um, yeah. So I I I kind of breathed, and then I pushed, and I breathed, and I pushed, and it probably got to about 45 minutes of kind of just doing what I felt was right. And I was getting a bit frustrated, and I said, "Is he going to come out? How do I get him out?" And they just all kind of surrounded me with love and said, you're doing everything perfectly. You're going to have a baby. You're seeing stretching and he's coming. But if you want to have him faster, you could try um, jumping into a supported squat in the pool, or you could get up to the toilet, or, you know, but either way, you're doing the right thing. And I was like, right, I'm just going to push then. Really nervous to put down the gas. And I'd said to them, like, I don't want you to take the gas off me. And they're like, we won't do that. But often in practice, we say that, it's better to push without the gas. I knew they would never take it off me, but I just had to say that to them. I was like, I'm going to push this baby out with the gas. That's what I'm going to do. Um, so I put the gas down and I pushed on pushing, on on pushing like I was doing a poo. And honestly, within about 10 minutes, I was feeling that stretching, that pressure. It was different. It was it was overwhelming. He was coming out if I was going to focus on pushing like that. Um, yeah. So sorry, my mind just went somewhere else for a second. Um, I think I don't think that the ring of fire is an accurate description of what it felt like for me to push him out. Um, it was just a huge amount of pressure. Um, really, really intense. Um, and I found myself making those noises that I was so scared of. Uh, but it wasn't because I was in agony or pain, so to speak. It was because it was so intense and I was coming to the end of this really powerful experience. Um, sorry, I've got a loud feeder here.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, so I had told my midwives I didn't want to be talked through how much of his head was coming. I didn't want to be told, right, yep, you're crowning now and breathe now. I didn't want to be told what to do. I just wanted to do it. And they were very respectful of that. And I could tell, I could feel it. I didn't need to be told.
Oh.
Um, yeah, there was more and more stretching happening, and then suddenly a pop, and his head was out. And then they all said to me, "Oh, P," and I was
Ah!
like, "Jane," and I'm in a daze, and they were like, "He's posterior." So he popped out, facing the sky again, like Mildred had. Um, and most babies will turn anterior,
Yeah.
even if they are posterior during labor. I think it must just be my pelvis or something. But it didn't feel abnormal, or my labor was totally stock standard.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so it was, yeah, there was no indication that he was going to be posterior, but there also, it is a variation of normal still. And it isn't, yeah, something to be afraid of
Yeah,
necessarily.
I love that. And sometimes it's better just not to know because
Yeah,
there is such a culture of fear around posterior labors, you know?
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, sorry, feel free to ask me any questions. I feel like I'm just sort of rambling.
Well, I've been loving your story. It's been anything but boring for me to listen to it. Yeah, how did you feel? So he's born. He's born into the water. You pick him up. Tell us the next
Yeah.
bits and how you
Oh,
felt.
yes. Okay, yes. So yeah, his head's born, and we wait for the next contraction, and I grab him under his shoulders as the rest of his body's being born. My husband's hands are there, kind of grabbing his. Sorry, one second. Are you hungry? Yeah, so my husband and I catch him together. We go to bring him up out of the water. He's got the cord around his neck and his shoulders and his tummy. It's wrapped. It's wrapped. So my midwife kind of tells us to pause and unwraps it for us, and then we bring him back up. Yeah, because it was quite tight and probably would have gotten a bit stuck there. Um, just to bringing him out of the water, I mean.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we bring him up, and he is quite he's a bit pale, and just a little bit floppy. So my midwives come in to check him over and potentially stimulate him, and I said, hold on, I've got it. They gave me a towel, and I rubbed him up,
Mhm.
and gave him a real good rub up, and had him on my chest and spoke to him, and then he started crying, and it was okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah, and I appreciate them being there ready to step in, and
Mhm.
you never really know um how someone, some women can be, or some birthing people can
Ah.
be in a bit of shock and a little bit like a bit exhausted or a bit tired,
Mhm.
or whatever. And so they were there ready. But I just politely kind of indicated, no, I've got this, and I can take control of this situation. And that was an empowering moment for me. I think it was, no, I can help my baby
Mhm.
adjust to life. Yeah. Um, so yeah, he was all good. Started screaming within the minute. Um, but yeah, just needed a little help. Yeah. Yeah. So I had him on my skin. Um, and we didn't know he was a boy, so I was suddenly like, oh my gosh, Shane, he's a boy. And he was like, I know, I saw him because of his balls when he was coming up. out of the water. Um, but yeah, it was really, really exciting. And my daughter had actually just woken up maybe 20 minutes before he was born. So she was wandering around the birth pool, just playing with all the equipment and kind
Uh-huh.
of watching me. Um, yeah, she was pretty interested. Um, she ended up taking her clothes off and jumping in the pool with us, splashing around. And and yeah, it was just a really beautiful moment. Um, yeah, just the four of us and our midwife. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about yourself?
Um, I mean, I didn't really in that moment, um, kind of I hadn't really thought about the birth at that point. I was just so happy. I was just so excited and glad he was here and thought he was beautiful and
Mm.
was just, yeah, stoked for my
Mm.
family in that moment. I was just on top of the world. Yeah,
Mm.
so, so happy. Um, and yeah, it wasn't till I kind of got out because the after pains were quite strong this time around. And that's very common when you've had a baby before. The uterus just, as you would know, Carla, just takes time to contract back down when it's been stretched multiple times. Um, so yeah, those contractions were really quite strong. Um, and painful. So I ended up getting out of the pool earlier than I'd anticipated, um, and tried to sit on the toilet, and I was just a bit over it. And I asked my midwife to just give me um, the synthetic oxytocin injection and guide my placenta out. So, and it had been about an hour at that point, anyways. Um, Not that I strongly believe in getting a placenta out at an hour, but that is a recommendation. And I just thought it's fine. I feel okay making that decision. I would like to focus on my baby now.
Mm.
At this point, we had yeah, relocated to the bathroom and yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we got the placenta out, and I just lay on the couch and fed him, and yeah, I was the kids, my stepkids were here at this point. My husband called them straight away and got them over. And so yeah, they had cut the cord and tied the cord with a muka
Oh,
tie. So that was really special.
yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, it was good.
Wow. Go you. Hey?
Yeah, it was good.
Was your bond any different, did you notice, with Murphy initially, like you said initially with Mildred, that
Mm.
struggled a bit with bonding initially?
Yeah, yeah, those first few days I was just overwhelmed with a sense, yeah, I absolutely loved him. So yeah, very, very infatuated, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, oxytocin's
Um,
really doing its thing.
yeah, totally. I did have quite an intense hormonal crash after that, which took me a really long time to get out of, probably
Mm.
weeks. So that was really hard. I'm not sure exactly why. I think possibly just the anticipation for
Mm.
the birth. Because I'd worked so hard to get to this point. It was just this massive crash afterwards, which did affect our bond, I think, a little bit, but we're
Mm.
very much over that hump now.
What helped get you through that time?
Um, to be honest, I did need a bit of support from my GP and my doctors and our local kind of mothers mothers like mental health services.
Mhm.
But they were wonderful. Yeah,
Good,
just
good.
a lot of talking it through, and yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But I think it's those same practices that we had been working on while I was pregnant too. And that's why I've still got that affirmation up on the wall there saying I can do hard things. It's really hard having two kids,
Yeah.
two really little kids under two,
Mhm.
um, especially. Um, I mean, having children in general is really hard work. But for me, I was very aware that yeah, it was going to be hard having two babies essentially.
Mm. Mm.
Um, but still nothing prepares you. I think it's still something I'm working through, and
Mm. Yeah.
yeah,
And it is such an individual thing, depending on the temperaments of your children and on your degree of, I don't know, family support around you, on whether you're, being fed nourishing meals every day, or like there's just so much that plays into it, how you're sleeping. Yeah. So
yeah,
there's a lot of things that feed into the postpartum experience, and it is a very individual thing. You said earlier, and I don't know if it'll make the cut, so I'm repeating it in case it doesn't, that you are still feeding Mildred. So you're
yes.
tandem feeding. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to share about that experience?
Gosh, yeah. Um, yeah, so I think part of me probably wasn't prepared to have such a close bond with Murphy. Um, because of my last experience. I felt like it took me so long to bond with Mildred. Um, and also I just couldn't picture him being in my life yet. So I I was really grieving our our breastfeeding journey. So Mildred and I, uh, my milk supply dropped quite drastically at 12 weeks ish when I was pregnant.
Which is
Um,
really common.
yeah, really common. So when she would wake in the night, I would often try to put her to my breast because that was the only time she would want to suckle. Because I had hardly any milk and she was half asleep, and it was
Hmm.
just a way to soothe her. So I kept that going pretty, it was very much one-sided. I kept that going. Um, because I really didn't want to lose that. And I thought, well, when my milk supply returns, maybe she'll feed again.
Yeah.
And oh boy, yeah, she did. Like
My goodness.
she saw him feeding and she was like, oh yeah, I'll give that a go. And she was back to feeding 6 to 8 times a day. Like yeah, it was really intense.
Honestly, my two boys are 17 months apart, and I breastfed all three of my kids until they were 3. So there was 19 months of tandem feeding. Well, Luca, I had the milk supply drop off like you did, and like most people do when you're pregnant. He continued to feed really, but continued to feed. But then when my milk came in, when Jonah was born, and there's this like fatty colostrum, and it's like extra tasty milk, like lots of sugar. And he was like, oh my God, yes, I remember this, yum. And he was like Mildred. He stopped eating, and he just wanted to feed whenever he could. And his poos went back to baby poos, and he got fat. He grew out of all his clothes. I was like, right, we need to put a bit of a kibosh on this. Like, I had to limit him to when he was allowed to feed, because I was just continuously feeding, and you said before, they're sucking the life out of me. Yeah, I was like, I don't have any energy for anything else.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. My poor body. No, but my body is amazing. And everyone keeps asking, how are you making enough milk for two
Yeah.
baby? And that's what that's what my breasts are designed to do, just supply and demand. And it's quite amazing how they how they change depending
Yeah.
on the day. And
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, so it is very sweet, but it is also exhausting. So we have had to kind of put some boundaries in place. I try to just, I mean, it's hard because when she wakes up in the night, she's obviously most upset. So she really wants to feed in the night, but I'm so exhausted from feeding every couple of hours. So I try to distract her, but if she's particularly upset, then I'll just pop her on. I don't want
Mm,
it to be a traumatic experience for her.
mm,
So,
mm,
um, but I try cuddles first. She might
mm.
feed a few times during the day, um, but not heaps. And I know it's so good for her, so I don't mind. Um, but yeah, I don't feel ready to wean her just yet. So
Yeah.
not there. And she's not even two. She's still a baby herself. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's fine. It's all good.
I love that.
But it is intense. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a lot. You're looking really super healthy and glowy. Like, yeah, I'm not sure if this is just a bit of a facade you're putting on for the podcast, but yeah, you're looking really healthy to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Like I said before, I'm doing my best to stay really, really hydrated
Yeah,
and just I have snacks everywhere. I'm about to order some new vitamins. Yeah, I'm just trying to be really conscious of my health because
right.
it's so intense feeding a baby, let alone two.
Yeah. Well, this has been an absolute treat for me this morning, Candice. It's been such a gift getting to work with you. Like I felt really honoured. I always do when, especially when it's a health professional, midwife, and I think it's quite a vulnerable thing to do to say, especially like when we're a midwife. Uh, you know, I experienced birth trauma and I need some help. And I loved our journey of working together through your pregnancy, and it just, oh my gosh, made me just so elated when I got the message about, Murphy's birth, and then, will you come on the podcast? And you're like, yes.
Yeah.
So this has just been, yeah, one of those magical moments for me. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your story, for allowing me to work with you, and yeah, for just a lot of vulnerable sharing today. It means a lot, and I'm sure it is such a beautiful gift to many of the listeners. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your patience. I feel like I can kind of ramble quite a lot. So
I'm rambling. I loved it all.
oh, that's good. Oh, cheers.